The kid who played Calogero, the boy the entire film is built to save, went to prison for a burglary that got a cop killed. Not the kid who played him at 9, the kid who played him at 17. Lilo Brancato Jr. cast opposite Robert De Niro in a movie whose entire thesis is that the saddest thing in life is wasted talent. 12 years after the film wrapped, Brancato was standing in a Bronx apartment at 2 in the morning while his associate shot an off-duty police officer named Daniel Enchaudegui through the door. Enchaudegui was 28 years old. He died in the same borough where the movie was filmed. Chaz Palminteri's response when he heard was one sentence. Here's a guy who was in the quintessential movie about not wasting your life, and that's exactly what he did. But Brancato wasn't the only one. The real friends who inspired the crew in the film, the guys C runs with on Belmont Avenue, are dead, killed in racial violence on the same streets where the story took place. The actor who originated the role of Sonny on Broadway, Nick Cordero, died of COVID at 41 after 95 days in a hospital. His right leg amputated, his body destroyed by blood clots. The neighborhood itself, the Belmont section of the Bronx, the Italian enclave where every scene was rooted, is now 61% Hispanic, 30% Black, and under 5% white. The median household income is $32,000. The poverty rate is over 41%. The film ended in 1968. It wrapped everything in a bow. The boy was saved, the lesson was learned, the credits rolled. But real life kept going for every person behind those characters, every actor who portrayed them, and every block of concrete the story was built on. What happened after is a story the film couldn't tell, and it's worse and more human than fiction. Everyone knows A Bronx Tale is the story of a boy pulled between two fathers. The film gives you an ending. The real version gives you 30 years of aftermath, and the aftermath is where the thesis gets tested. The saddest thing in life is wasted talent. That line came from a real man. It was written on a real index card, and the people who heard it, the ones who lived inside the story, split into two groups, the ones who carried the card and the ones who didn't. Belmont Avenue in the early 1960s was 8 blocks of Sicily dropped into the northwest Bronx. D'Otanfri. 5-story walk-ups lined both sides of the street. Laundry hung between fire escapes. Old women sat in folding chairs on the sidewalk and watched everything. The men, the ones who mattered on that street, gathered at a bar near the corner of 187th and Belmont, a place the neighborhood knew by its owner's first name. Across the avenue, social clubs operated behind unmarked doors. You didn't walk into those clubs unless someone told you to. The territory belonged to both the Genovese and Lucchese crime families, a shared jurisdiction that functioned through proximity and mutual respect rather than formal agreement. Genovese capo regime Pasquale Parello, Patsy, ran operations from Pasquale's Rigoletto restaurant at 2311 Arthur Avenue for decades. He'd eventually be convicted of loan sharking in 2004 and indicted again in 2016 as part of a 46-person racketeering case. Rudolph Santabello, another Genovese capo, held court at Club Arthur's on Arthur Avenue. The Lucchese family maintained its own deep roots, soldiers and associates whose names never made the papers, but whose presence on the street was understood by everyone who lived there. Into this world, on May 15, 1952, Calogero Lorenzo Palminteri was born. He grew up at 667 East 187th Street, a 5-floor walk-up a few doors from the corner of Comberlang Avenue. His stoop faced the street. From that stoop, around 1961, he watched a local mob figure shoot and kill a man in broad daylight. He was 9 years old, 5 feet away. His father dragged him upstairs. The police came. They asked if he saw anything. He said he didn't see anything. He was a street kid. You didn't talk. The next day, the killer spotted young Calogero on the street. They looked at each other. The man smiled. That silent exchange, The recognition that a bond had been formed through shared knowledge became the emotional foundation of everything Palminteri would later write. The killer would become his mentor. He would teach him about respect, about fear, about Machiavelli's The Prince. He would become the model for Sonny L'Specchio. But the kid they'd eventually cast to play this boy, to play the version of Calogero who gets saved, would end up in a place the real Calogero never went. And what the film changed about the most important scene in the story rewrites the meaning of the whole thing. Here's what the film got wrong about the beginning. The police lineup, the scene where young Calogero locks eyes with Sonny through the one-way glass and refuses to identify him, never happened. Palminteri confirmed this himself on NPR and to the Las Vegas Review-Journal. Once his father dragged him upstairs, he never went back down. There was no lineup. There was no dramatic moment of eye contact through glass. There was just a kid on a street who kept his mouth shut and a man who noticed. Palminteri added the lineup as a screenwriter because he thought it would cement the bond between boy and gangster. The truth was quieter. The bond formed over time, on the sidewalk, through proximity and silence. But that boundary, the line between what really happened and what the film made more dramatic, runs through the entire story. And it matters most at the moment that changed everything. The racial geography of Belmont was as rigid as any wall. Webster Avenue formed the boundary, east of it, Italian, west of it, increasingly Black and Puerto Rican. Professor Mark Nyson at Fordham University documented that buses carrying Black and Latino students to Roosevelt High School had to be rerouted away from Arthur Avenue because residents threw rocks at them. That boundary would eventually dissolve entirely, and what replaced it is a story the film never imagined. But in the early 60s, it was the fault line that defined the neighborhood's identity and its violence. Lorenzo Palminteri took 5 sick days in 30 years. He drove the number 12 bus to City Island for New York City Surface Transit, later the MTA, for nearly 3 decades. He was never late. He wore his uniform like other men wore suits. He was, by his son's description, part of the greatest generation. Not a war hero, not a man who made history. A man who got up every morning, went to his job, and came home. The line everyone knows, "The saddest thing in life is wasted talent," came from Lorenzo's mouth, not from a screenwriter, not from a story consultant, from a bus driver in the Bronx who wrote it on an index card and put it in his son's bedroom. Palminteri still carries copies of that card. He hands them out after every show. The other signature Lorenzo line, about how it doesn't take much strength to pull a trigger, but getting up every morning and going to a job you hate to feed your family, that's the real strength, also came directly from his father. De Niro prepared for the role by spending a month with the real Lorenzo, studying his walk, his speech patterns, the way he held a conversation. Imagine that from a Sicilian bus driver's perspective. The man your son grew up watching in The Godfather is now sitting in your kitchen, studying the way you butter toast. Lorenzo died in 2008. He was approximately 88 or 89 years old. His specific cause of death was never made public. Rose Palminteri, née Anello, whose maiden name became the character surname in the film, died in 2016 in her mid-90s. She passed just months before the Broadway musical of A Bronx Tale opened on December 1st that year. Mas, she never saw it. The character named Gabriella Rose, given to Palminteri's real daughter, honors her. Before I get to what happened to the real Sonny and what the film changed about the most important scene in the story, I'd be curious. Do you think Palminteri made the right call giving Sonny the rescue instead of keeping the truth? Let me know. 3 men, no names, 35 years of silence. Palminteri has maintained absolute secrecy about the identity of the real Sonny since he first performed the one-man show in 1989. He confirmed to the Boston Globe in 2019 that Sonny L'Specchio is a blending of 3 real-life people he knew growing up, 3 actual mafiosi from the Belmont neighborhood. He then declined to name any of them. When AM New York asked in 2007 whether the real Sonny was alive or dead, he refused to answer. What he has revealed is the paradox at the center of the character. The real Sonny told young Calogero the exact same things his father did. Stay away from these guys. Don't be a wise guy. Go to college. Make something of yourself. The gangster and the bus driver were giving the same advice. The difference was that one of them had blood on his hands while he said it, and the other had bus grease. The manner of Sonny's death in the film, shot in the head by the grown son of the man he killed years earlier, is based on what really happened. Palminteri confirmed he didn't witness it himself, but arrived soon after the real Sonny was killed by the victim's son. The car bomb subplot that precedes it in the film was a fictional addition for suspense. The studios wanted Sonny to survive. Palminteri and De Niro both refused. Sonny has to die, Palminteri insisted. It's not a sad ending. It's a catharsis. But the most important thing the film changed has nothing to do with Sonny's death. It has to do with Sonny's life, specifically the scene that defines their entire relationship. In the film, Sonny physically pulls Calogero from the car before his friends drive to Webster Avenue, throw Molotov cocktails, and die when the bomb is thrown back into their vehicle. It's the rescue that justifies everything. The proof that Sonny, despite what he is, loved the kid enough to save him. That scene didn't happen. Not like that. In reality, Palminteri got in the car with his friends. He sat there. And then he thought of his parents. Everything his father had said, everything his mother had worried about, all of it came together in one moment. And he got out of the car on his own. Nobody pulled him. Nobody grabbed his arm. The bus driver's son made a choice. And the choice was his father's voice in his head, not a gangster's hand on his shoulder. Palminteri changed it for the film because he wanted to bond Sonny and himself even more, to give the audience a reason to grieve Sonny's death as the loss of a protector, not just a mentor. The dramatic instinct was sound, but the truth is more powerful than the fiction. The quiet man won. Lorenzo Palminteri, who was never late for work and left index cards in his son's bedroom, saved his son's life without being there. The gangster didn't save the boy, the bus driver did. $15,000 in cash disappeared from the set. Nobody was surprised. The supporting characters in A Bronx Tale were drawn directly from Palminteri's childhood, and several of them were real people whose nicknames were their only famous names. Eddie Mush, the catastrophically unlucky gambler whose mere presence could jinx any bet, was a real person named Eddie Montanaro. When De Niro had trouble casting the role, Palminteri suggested they find the actual Eddie. They located him in the same Bronx neighborhood, still losing bets. When they asked him to come in for a meeting at noon, Montanaro replied that he could come at 3 because he had to make the daily double at Aqueduct. De Niro cast him on the spot. Even Montanaro's death maintained the pattern. His hearse got a flat tire. Frankie Coffee Cake was named for a real person whose severe acne made his face resemble a Drake's coffee cake. The actor Dave Salerno was a childhood friend from Throg's Neck who had never acted before. When he showed up on set, De Niro told Palminteri he'd like to use him for coffee and cake. Salerno thought he was being sent to fetch refreshments. Tony Toupee was based on a neighborhood character who wore what Palminteri described as the worst hairpiece in the world and communicated primarily through singing. Jojo the Whale was so large that, as Palminteri put it in the one-man show, you didn't walk with Jojo, you orbited him. The crap scene used real cash. De Niro insisted on it. Most of the extras in that sequence were actual street guys from the neighborhood, not professional actors. By the time the scene wrapped, the $15,000 was gone. These guys were gangsters, Palminteri said at a Bedford Playhouse appearance. They couldn't help themselves. The biker bar brawl, the scene where Sonny locks the door and his crew beats the Hells Angels, happened. Palminteri confirmed it on multiple occasions. He was sitting in the corner of the bar like Calogero in the film. Bikers came in. Sonny let them have a beer. They disrespected him. In real life, Sonny nodded to his guy. The guy pulled down the shade and locked the door. The line, "Now yous can't leave," was actually spoken by the real mob figure. The bikers used in the film were real New York City Hell's Angels. The door test, Sonny's advice about whether a girl reaches over to unlock your car door, was real advice from the real neighborhood figure. People still tell Palminteri at shows that they married their wife because she passed the door test. The interracial relationship was real. Palminteri dated a black girl for about 4 months when he was 17. The real Sonny, he said, wasn't bothered by it at all. His father, despite having black friends who came to dinner, disapproved of his son dating across racial lines. The film captures that tension faithfully. But the comedy of the nicknames and the colorful characters eventually gives way to something heavier. The friends who inspired C's crew are dead. When the Las Vegas Review-Journal asked Palminteri about the firebombing, he raised an eyebrow and said quietly, "The guys died, man." The timeline was compressed for the film. Real incidents of racial violence happened across multiple episodes, not in a single night, but the deaths were real. Real people Palminteri grew up with were killed in the streets of Belmont. Some of those nicknames belong to men who are in the ground. If you're finding this worth knowing, a subscribe keeps these coming. December 10th, 2005. A Bronx apartment, a 28-year-old cop, Lilo Brancato Jr., was born Saul Rodriguez in Bogota, Colombia. He was adopted by Italian-American parents in Yonkers, New York, and grew up speaking with the accent and carrying the mannerisms of a kid from the neighborhood. In the summer of 1992, a casting director spotted the 16-year-old at Jones Beach. Within weeks, he was reading opposite Robert De Niro. He got the part. He became teenage Calogero, the embodiment of the kid who gets saved. The boy the whole movie wraps its arms around. The early career was promising. He played Matthew Bevilacqua on The Sopranos, the low-level associate who gets executed in a memorable scene in season 2. He had a face the camera liked and the kind of Bronx authenticity that couldn't be faked because it wasn't fake. A real career was forming, then cocaine, then heroin. The spiral was fast and total. By 2005, Brancato was a 30-year-old addict. On the night of December 10th, he and an associate named Stephen Armento broke into a basement apartment in the Van Ness section of the Bronx, looking for Valium to steal. Off-duty NYPD officer Daniel Enchaudegui, who lived upstairs, heard the noise and came down to investigate. He was 28 years old. He was carrying his service weapon. Armento shot him through the door. Enchaudegui fired back, hitting Brancato in the chest. Then Enchaudegui collapsed and died. Brancato survived. He was charged with second-degree murder. At trial, he was acquitted of the murder charge. The prosecution couldn't prove he knew Armento would shoot, but convicted of first-degree attempted burglary. He was sentenced to 10 years. He served his time and was released in December 2013. He is currently sober and works at a recovery center in New Jersey. The specific cruelty of Brancato's story is not that a young actor threw away a career. Hollywood has 100 of those. The cruelty is the symmetry. He was cast in a movie whose entire message was, "Don't waste what you've been given." He played the character who receives that message. He heard it spoken aloud by De Niro, by Palminteri, on take after take after take. And then he walked off the set and wasted everything. The film's thesis didn't save him. The index card didn't reach him. The lesson was written, spoken, filmed, released to millions, and the person closest to it, the one who literally embodied it on screen, was the one it failed to protect. Daniel Enchautegui's family has never spoken publicly about Brancato. The officer left behind a wife and a community of fellow cops who packed the courtroom for every day of the trial. He was buried with full honors. He was 28, 95 days. That's how long Nick Cordero fought. Francis Capra, the boy who played 9-year-old Calogero, had a quieter trajectory. He went on to play Eli Weevil Navarro on Veronica Mars and built a steady career as a working character actor. We're accumulating roughly 50 credits over 3 decades. But the film's themes touched his life in ways that the screen couldn't show. His real father was incarcerated for most of his childhood and was killed in a shooting in 2003. The kid who played the boy caught between 2 fathers had a father who never came home. Nick Cordero was the actor who originated the role of Sonny in the Broadway musical, the version of the show that opened on December 1st, 2016, co-directed by De Niro and Jerry Zaks, and ran for 700 performances at the Longacre Theater. Cordero inhabited Sonny night after night, delivering the lessons about wasted talent and the door test and the quiet authority of a man who controlled a corner. On July 5th, 2020, after 95 days in the intensive care unit at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles, Cordero died of complications from COVID-19. He was 41. He had suffered multiple strokes, blood clots throughout his body, and had his right leg amputated in an effort to save his life. De Niro called the loss unimaginable. Over 150 performers participated in a tribute video, singing Cordero's song, One of the Great Ones, from the musical. And then there is Palminteri himself, the only person the lesson actually saved, because he was the one who kept saying it. He earned an Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor in Woody Allen's Bullets Over Broadway in 1994. He starred in The Usual Suspects the following year. He brought A Bronx Tale to Broadway as a one-man show in 2007, and performing 111 nights at the Walter Kerr Theater. He co-wrote the book for the musical. He is the first person in history to write the one-man play, the movie screenplay, and the Broadway musical book, and star in each one. He is now 73. He lives in Bedford, Westchester County, with his wife, Gianna Rinaudo. They married in 1992, and their 2 children, Dante and Gabriella Rose. He runs 2 Italian restaurants. He hosts the Chaz Palminteri Show podcast and co-hosts The Wise and the Wise Guy with former Columbo underboss Michael Franzesi. In January 2025, a filmed version of the one-man show was released by Tribeca Films on streaming platforms. He still visits Belmont a couple of times a month. He still tours the show nationally. He still carries the card. There's a pattern in all of this, one that the film understood instinctively but never had to prove, because films end before the proof arrives. The only people who survive a story like this are the ones who keep repeating its lesson, not the ones who hear it once, not the ones who nod and move on, the ones who carry it, literally, physically, on an index card in their pocket and hand it to other people over and over for 35 years. Lorenzo wrote it down. Chaz carries it. The people who heard it once and let it go are the ones the story consumed. The neighborhood that made the story no longer exists. Not the buildings, many of those are still standing. Not the commercial strip. Arthur Avenue is, against every demographic trend, still operational. Mario's restaurant, founded in 1919, still serves dinner. The Arthur Avenue Retail Market, built by Mayor LaGuardia in 1940, still houses butchers and pasta makers and cheese vendors working under the same roof. Borgatti's still makes fresh pasta. Madonia Bakery still opens at dawn. The American Planning Association named Arthur Avenue one of America's greatest streets in 2016. But the people are different. The census tells the story in numbers the neighborhood tells in silence. The broader Belmont area is now roughly 61% Hispanic, 30% Black, and under 5% non-Hispanic white. A near total inversion from the mid-20th century, when more than half the residents traced their roots to southern Italy. The median household income sits at approximately $32,000. The poverty rate is over 41%. The Italian commercial presence survives as a cultural island inside a neighborhood that is otherwise transformed completely. An active walking tour, the A Bronx Tale walking tour, takes visitors through the real locations. They stand on the stoop at 667 East 187th Street, where a 9-year-old boy watched a man die. They walk past the corner where the wise guys held court. They pose for photographs on the same sidewalk where Dion and the Belmonts once sang doo-wop under a lamppost, where Eddie Mush lost bets that defied the laws of probability, where a bus driver kissed his wife goodbye every morning and drove the number 12 to City Island. The stoop is still there. The 5-story walk-up still stands. The street is quieter now. Different languages, different faces, different rhythms. But the concrete is the same concrete. Palminteri is 73. He lives 45 minutes north in a house in Westchester with his wife and his children, and a career that grew from the single decision to write down what happened on that street and refuse to let anyone else tell it for him. He still performs the one-man show. He still carries his father's index card. He still hands copies to strangers after every performance. A bus driver's handwriting, photocopied 1,000 times, pressed into the palms of people who will never know the man who wrote it. The saddest thing in life is wasted talent. The card is worn at the edges now. The words are still legible,